Welcome to the Real Estate Women's Podcast. Thanks for pulling up a chair to our roundtable discussion. Here, we'll teach you how you can create a stream of passive income through multifamily investing, and we'll help you to shift your mindset so you can start living the life you really want to be living by design today.
Hello, everyone. We're the Real Estate Women. I'm Colleen.
I'm Crystal.
I'm Tamara.
And I'm Candy, and welcome to the Passive Income Podcast. Today's episode, we're going to talk about the importance of setting goals to help you fast track you to achieving the success you desire in your life. And of course, goal setting goes hand in hand with having the right mindset to the big dream. And that's why we brought on Julie Holly for this episode. Julie, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm so happy to be here. I mean, it's a group full of friends. So this is a favorite topic of mine. So I'm really grateful to be here with you and to be able to share and discuss a favorite topic.
Thank you.
Well, awesome. Julie, before we get started, we'd like our listeners to learn a little bit about you. Julie is the founder of Three Key Investments. She helps people find freedom through multifamily real estate investing and has invested in single-family homes, house hacked before it had a name, managed properties, and passively invested in multifamily assets. Currently, Julie is passively invested in nearly 300 doors, strategically partnered in 68, and is a general partner 120. She also hosts a podcast designed to fuel the mind and soul. So, Julie, we believe like you. We have this common, thought process and, about setting goals and the importance of it. So how important is setting goals to you, and how did you get started?
I hated goals. Does anybody else did anybody else have that aversion to goals?
Yeah, a little bit.
And if, listener, you're feeling the same way. I mean, goals can be really intimidating and daunting. And for a lot of years, I had well-intentioned, I'll make a goal. And it scared me because I thought it was putting it into wet cement. And I thought that I was going to be a failure. And so I associated a lot of things with goal setting. It meant if I don't reach this goal, if I don't attain this goal, then I will feel, and I filled in, see if this resonates with you, shame. I'm a failure. I'm a quitter. I'm incompetent. And I could just go down the list. And so I had all these really negative associations with goal setting. And so I avoided goal setting in a macro way. I just kind of set a goal half-heartedly. I'll just go run that half marathon, I don't have to do well. I'll just and so basically you end up half-assing things instead of actually showing up at your full potential, all because you have this mindset that's based in this association with, if I don't achieve this, then that. So I had to actually really unwind and unpack a lot of my thinking surrounding goals before I even started setting goals. Once I started setting goals, it's phenomenal. And now I'm in love with goals. So I'm going to leave it right there because there are 4 of you. And I know that we all have feelings surrounding this and different ideas.
What's your process when you just talked about what you uncovered for yourself? What was that process for you?
For me,
what was it like?
Yeah, it was a matter of really for me working with my high performance coach. That was the first part of that process. And that taught me, I'm already a very introspective person, but that also taught me how to really do even deeper, more significant reflection that is actually productive, right? So a lot of times we are very introspective people. Most people, I think most humans actually do a lot of reflecting. But that reflecting leads into negative spaces and negative constructs because unfortunately, most people's brain naturally goes into the negative. And so I had to rewire some of that thinking around that in order to move forward. So working with my high performance coach allowed me to put more productivity and more positivity, which I'm a pretty positive person. So it's kind of probably shocking to a lot of people, but I had to even put more positivity into that. I'm like super positive towards other people. I'm super hard on myself. And so learning how to how should I speak to myself? How would I talk to my friend? Why am I not talking to myself that way? What would how can I cheer myself on instead of tearing myself down? And so that was really the core process right there of shifting that mindset from a negative fixed mindset around and self-perception and cultivating a deeper awareness. And I would encourage anyone, like you're listening to this, I'm sure this is resonating with at least like 80% of you right now, because it's just, I'm not unique. It's very common amongst people, especially when I think about my coaching clients and such. This is something that's very, very common. And so being able to shift your thinking around yourself, to be able to look in the mirror and say, I like you, to be able to look in the mirror and even say, I love you. That is a huge step for most people. And if we want to be successful with our goals, we have to be successful with ourselves. And we spend the most time in the world in our own body. And yet we're so mean to ourselves oftentimes. And we really don't know ourselves very well. We make a lot of assumptions and we put a lot of framework and boxes around who we are, and they're not accurate if we start to dig deeper.
It's so true. And like we were actually just chatting before about like your self-talk and like the subconsciousness. Sometimes you think like for you, like you're a positive person and you're so positive towards everyone else, but you forget to think about like your subconscious thoughts, your subconscious feelings, the self-talk that you have with yourself. And that is definitely a huge thing about getting in the right mindset to set those goals. And it's funny when you said you were not like you didn't like goals and you hated them. And it's funny because for me, it's like, I didn't even really realize, like, I feel like I've always been a planner my whole life. I've been someone to make a plan. So when someone said goal setting, I'm like, oh, I already have a plan. Like I have a plan for this, but it really wasn't granular. It wasn't like an actual goal broken down into steps that I need to achieve every day to achieve my weekly, to achieve my monthly, to achieve the annual goal. So I wrote it off for so long and thought, well, that's just what people who don't plan do. That's just what they call it. But then once I like really realized the power of setting a goal, like I was mind blown. I'm like, it's more than just a plan. It's a plan with action behind it. And that was a big disconnect for me for the longest time. And then it went back to my self-talk too, like, oh, a goal is just it's just something you can miss. Like, what if you don't hit your goal? Like you always get to your plan. You figure your plan out because there's no date. And that's another dangerous thing without a date.
Yeah.
I would only set short-term goals, and anything that would be considered like long-term, more than a year, I would think of them as just dreams and not really focus on that because it was too far away. So I would always, if I did focus in on a goal, it was about short term, and I didn't realize that it was, so therefore my life was being limited by that and how far I could go and where I was going with it. I was taking like a really long windy path, which sometimes can be a very beautiful path to take, but taking way too long to get to somewhere that there are certain areas I could have just like hopped on the freeway to get there if I had that goal in mind for long term.
Yeah, definitely. I think part of my issues sometimes are like setting realistic goals, right? Because I'm good for, there's things that I want, but I don't necessarily sit there and think about the actual time it's going to take to realistically do something to where I am going to be able to achieve it versus setting myself up for failure. You know, it's like those going on vacation in 2 weeks, need to lose 20 pounds. Well, if you do that, you're not doing it healthy. That's not the right way to go about it. So I'm very good at like setting those goals, but sometimes that's my issue. I'm not realistic about it. You know, to do something in the healthy, right way that gets you there and then gets you to stay there, you got to go about it the right way.
That's
that
true.
discipline. And,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I really like all of this conversation because we've touched on a few different things like dreams, realistic goals, timelines, right? And all of these things are so let's just like take some of these just like step by step, right? One, dreams. Like you I didn't believe this until probably 6 years ago, but our dreams can become reality. Like our dreams are within us for a reason and a purpose. And the reason that you have these passions and these dreams isn't because it's there to torment you and it's always going to stay out of reach and it's not going to be something achievable. It's within you and you dream about it because it is within you and it's achievable and you can get there. And so when we accept that, oh wait, my dream isn't just a dream, my dream is actually going to be my reality, and we choose to live that and to do that subconscious work where we're visualizing about it and we're taking time to allow ourselves not to dream about it, but allow our subconscious mind to create the neural pathways so that it becomes easy. We can see where we're going, and every decision that we're making becomes easier because it's starting to be fueled. Like our decisions that we make subconsciously start feeding into that. And that kind of feeds into that timeline process, Colleen. Like, I love that. Like, we can't lose a 20 pounds in a healthy way. But when we are focused on what it is that we're looking to accomplish, then and we have a timeline for it, then we can actually start making decisions. And we're going to make decisions without even thinking about it. It's going to be so easy because we've already conditioned our subconscious mind, which the subconscious mind makes up at least 80% of your decisions. I think it's more than that. I think it might be 90%, but most of your decisions are already made by your subconscious mind. So the more we can feed that subconscious mind into this is the direction we want to go, the more we will just naturally gravitate and go that way, which makes reaching our dreams, our goals easier, right? So when we think about timelines, and actually on a personal note, this is funny because my husband and I were talking about goals and he has an aversion to goals. And so we were talking about this yesterday. He brought it up and he said, I want this goal by next year. And this is new for him. And this is great. I'm like, he said, I really want to do this, but I don't think it's achievable. And I just stopped and I said, anything you want is achievable. There is no limitation. I have a client that she'll be leaving her W-2 job. And in this last year, all of the assets that she has been able to pick up on her own or with a single partner is extraordinary. Wow. And so she's looking back on her years saying like, how was I able to accomplish this? Like, and she's not questioning herself, but she's just amazed at what our capacity actually is. And so that goes back to, we can't short ourselves. We can't say, I'm not capable of this. It is daunting. And if you have something that isn't daunting a little bit, I mean, I look at my goals and what I want to achieve just between November and December of, 2022. And then I look at 2023 in the next few years, I'm like, ooh, that's going to be a lot of energy, right? But it's going to be totally worth it at the same time. I'll pause because we have this
you just got to break them down into steps, right?
Something that was, for myself and goal setting and what you were talking about, how hard you are on yourself, is that I heard someone say this and it was so true, is that in this process, you can only compare yourself to yourself. You can't compare yourself and where you're going with your goals to other people around you, or that will continue that self-hatred, that whatever that baseball bat is, that invisible baseball bat, you're just beating yourself up. Because everybody's path and everybody's choices and everybody's lives are completely different, even in the same household. And that's something to really take into consideration when you're setting your goals, and always compare yourself. Where was I yesterday? Where was I a month ago in going towards this? And even if you're having a thought and a plan, you're one step further towards that goal and towards that dream than you were the day before, because you're thinking about creating that plan. And that you have to give yourself credit for that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's critical. And honestly, I'll still have, and if you don't have a down day, if you don't have a day where you're doubting yourself, I mean, I'm probably doubt myself every single day a few different times. Like, who am I to be doing X, Y, or Z? You know, you doubt yourself and you move on. But sometimes that discouragement is going to set in. Sometimes you are going to feel that outside pressure, and sometimes, you know, you can feel, oh, that's where, and you see people, that's where you want to be, and using those people instead of a gap, use it as a gain in your life, as something of, that's my inspiration, they did it, I can do it too. But I have, just to the side of me, I have my vision board, but I also have my accomplishments on there as well. It's split, it's not just one, it's split in two halves, and keeping track of, well, what have I accomplished, what have I done? And so when we create evidence in our lives, and so you could do this by taking a screenshot of, I do this all the time. If I get a great text message from somebody who listened to my podcast, they'll send me a text message, or on through whatever, you know, social channel, I'll screenshot that and I'll put it into a little folder in my phone. And it's evidence, it's proof, because now when I have those doubts and when I have those discouraging moments, I can go back to that evidence and I can look at the evidence and I can say, no, this is what I'm doing, and this is what I'm accomplishing, and I'm making the progress and headway that I want. And when we don't have that evidence, it's just us in our head. And so now we're just battling our mind, and
Very
our
powerful.
mind is really mean. Can be really mean to us.
Get that self-talk. And I love that, because I love the vision board. I have mine. I'm always looking at it every day. But I love the success board, because sometimes I feel like, for me, like, I have my vision board and I have my goals, and it's like, I am with your plan, like, you know, every day you have so many things you have to achieve. And then I'm the type of person that always shoots so high, and I want to keep adding different goals. I'm like, well, if I have this much time in the day, I can do this little extra to get me there. And then sometimes I end up like burning out a little. And then you just, like you said, you have those days. And I think to just see that, like, this is why I'm doing it, this is what I've achieved. Today, Crystal is better than yesterday's Crystal, is just that big encouragement, and the visualization of it, I think, is so smart. I'm totally going to make another little board as a success board. So I love that, Julie. That's awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I had never thought of that.
Yeah.
Great.
Because I think it puts you in a mindset of feeling like you're behind. Like you're behind, you know, like if you're only looking at what you're supposed to achieve, or what your goals are, that, like, or you didn't get, like, you got 8 things done on your things to do list and you had 20 or 12, you feel like you're behind. But however, you got those 8 things done instead of 0. I mean,
gratitude to our successes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now I have
tried to start my little gratitude journals.
Oh yeah, every day, gratitude every day. It's really critical. Now I'm thinking of a thermostat, you know, like they have for you know, fundraisers and stuff. And now I feel like I need to have like a timeline thermostat for next year, that just every year I can just start, like, you know, putting the, you know, evidence of what I've accomplished. Because if we look back, and we're far enough in this year, and it doesn't matter when you're listening to this. If you're listening to this and it's, you know, March of whatever year it is, right? You could just look back over the last 12 months. It doesn't matter when you're listening to it. It doesn't have to be a chronological year or something. Just look back over, like, what were the last 6 months? What did I do the last 3, 6, 12 months? And I bet you'll be absolutely amazed with yourself.
It's so
true.
It's so true. I totally agree with that. I kind of do that on a daily basis, particularly when I'm walking on the beach with my dog, and that's when I reflect. And I usually take, like, a similar route. And if I'm experiencing a feeling that is unpleasant because I'm having negative self-talk, I've practiced enough now to stop and analyze, why am I having that? What is triggering me in this moment to think that? Tends to be a feeling of a sense of lack, usually. And then it's a way to shift that very quickly. I'll go into a moment of gratitude. And the first thing, I mean, walking on the beach, that just alone, being able to have the luxury basically of doing that every day. Not everybody
Mm.
gets to do that. And that was a
Mhm.
dream of mine, and I'm living it today. And that I remind myself, I'm living in paradise. You know, people come here, spend a lot of money to come
Mhm.
up on Cape Cod, if people don't know that. And um, it's a beautiful place to be. And so when I think about it, it's like, oh wow, this thing that's bothering me right now, it's really, is it really a problem? Is it a luxury problem? Is it just something that's a situation that I need to just look at it from a different lens and then
Mm.
reapproach it? And one thing I wanted to touch on was, talking about changing the way that we think. Are you familiar with Joe Dispenza
I'm not.
and the videos of the neural pathways? Oh my gosh. You can find on YouTube channels Joe Dispenza. He has, he had an injury where he was hit by a car when he was riding a bicycle, and he was going to be. The doctors told him. I mean, I'm going to summarize this, and then please go get all the details, from his own story. But basically, his injury was going to leave him paralyzed from the neck down, I think it was, and he didn't want to do this invasive surgery that they were saying you need to do the surgery despite the fact that you're never going to walk again, but you need to do the surgery that will basically you're not going to walk again, but you need to do the surgery. It was like and it was like very intensive surgery. And so what ended up happening is he chose in that moment to not do it and to leave the hospital or go do a rehab. And he walks on stage now talking about that and the power of the mind,
Yep.
and
Mhm.
how, and it all connects to the power of healing, the power of changing the way that we look at things, the way that we think, that there's actually scientific evidence. And he shows in a
Mhm.
video that our neurons, I'm not be saying that right, but the little pathways that go to our brain that send us, this thought goes to this part of the brain to tell us to
Mhm.
do this same behavior that we always do. Well, when you're unlearning that, there's actually glue that's attached to that in our brain that holds us there to keep us in that safe space. And so when we're doing something new that doesn't follow that same pathway, the glue starts getting removed from that one and goes to the new pathway. But there's a little tiny battle. So that's why, you hear people talking about there's so many days to take for you to have
Mhm.
something, a new practice to become habitual. It's actually in your brain, biologically, there is like a little glue that's shifting from one to the other. And then all of a sudden when you're there, it's not like done with that. It's actually a process, and then that practice becomes habitual, and then before you know it, you're going, wait a minute, this is, I just habitually did that. How did that happen? It's just so subtle like that.
And that's why it's so critical that we guard everything that we're doing. Like, why we're doing this. Why am I picking up this bag of chips? Why am I making the call to that person that may be dysfunctional in my life? Why am I, like, why are we doing this? It's interesting because our brain, we don't look at our brain as a muscle. We look at it as an organ oftentimes, but it actually is constantly in growth mode, and it's constantly creating new dendrites, and constantly just like expanding. And so we have control over that. And whatever we're feeding our mind is going to allow our brain to be stimulated, no different than going to the gym, going for that walk, doing whatever it is that's invigorating our life. And so we can promote that growth within our brain. If you don't mind, I'd like to go back to Candy. You mentioned something about when you were on the beach and those
Hmm.
feelings that you have. And I had a podcast episode on this recently about sitting with your feelings. And a lot of times we just associate this negativity. We assign a value. We say this is good, that is bad. And if I feel happy,
Hmm.
that's good. If I feel sad,
Mhm.
that's bad. And instead, we need to reframe that. We need to look at, I mean, right, truly, we need to look
Mhm.
at this with our feelings with equal value and say, and this is something I've learned to do through coaching, something that I support my coaching clients with, is like, just imagine sitting on a bench and sadness shows up, and you allow sadness and you invite sadness and you say, wow. And you might be a little surprised and shocked. oh, why are you here? I really like happiness a little bit better than you, but and just put your arm around sadness. And I literally visualize this. Like I put my arm around sadness or grief or whatever, anger, frustration, like those feelings that we naturally say are bad feelings. Why did you show up? You're here. You're here for a purpose. You're here to show me something. You're not here because you want to bring something bad into my life. You're showing me insight into my life. You are shining a light into part of us, because that feeling is part of who we are. You're shining a light into a part of me that needs attention, and I appreciate you. Let's have this conversation. And it sounds strange to have a conversation with our feelings, but we do it all the time. And we're just not conscious of having that conversation, right? Is we'll sit there and we'll, like ladies will fuss in the mirror, like, oh, I just can't, oh, these wrinkles, oh, this, and we'll have these conversations with these feelings that we're having. Why don't we make those into productive conversations?
That is so great in so many ways. And it's so funny because like I feel like the mom part of me takes over a lot in a lot of different things I do. And I feel like for my daughter, I remember to like always tell her, well, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to have feelings. Like I specifically bought like this book, like Grumpy Monkey, because it's about like you're grumpy and it's okay to be grumpy. Whatever feelings you have, it's okay. But I feel like I forget to tell that to myself. Like I always remember to like do the positive things, do the right things for her, set her up in the right way. But when it comes to me, like I know it's okay to be sad, but I've never had the conversation with myself in like the awesome way you just put it. Like I never think about it doing that for me like I have that with her. And I think that is so huge. And I know I'm going to try to adopt that. I'm going to talk to myself as if I am talking to my daughter and be like, it's okay to be this way. Why? What happened? Just like I would ask her. But until that very moment where you just mentioned it, I never thought of having that conversation with myself. Only ever I realized that, well, I do that with my daughter. Why don't I do it with myself? And, it's so great to think about, it's okay that I did it. Now I can start.
Oh,
absolutely.
absolutely.
One of those, you just said that. Oh, sorry. There's a little bit of a delay. I'm sorry. Crystal, when you just said that, it made me think that, like that visualization of sitting on the bench and having that conversation with the feeling is that it could possibly uncover, like let's use the example. If I'm feeling sad and I'm having that conversation with the sadness side of me, I could be opening up a limiting belief that it's like I'm sad because there's a part of me that is not taking the step towards my goal because I don't know how, or I'm afraid, but I'm letting the overall feeling of sadness keep it at a comfort level because I know what sadness feels like. So I can stay there and I can grieve the loss of something that I've never achieved to do.
Yeah, 100%.
And by having that conversation, I could say, I'm feeling sad because I really desire whatever this outcome is that I would like to have. So the sadness is a sense of loss of something that I'm not taking steps towards. So what can I do so that I can move forward towards whatever it is that I'm trying to achieve? And that could be financial freedom through investing in multifamily. That could just be in bettering my relationships with the people around me. I mean, that can just go across the board in any aspect of your life.
Yeah. And that brings up a good topic. Like sometimes I know in the beginning, I forgot to set goals, personal goals and family goals. I was just so focused on business goals. And then I started realizing the importance of that. And what's your thoughts with that, Julie? And how do you typically break down your different goal categories and like awesome.
Yeah, I'm showing the goals, for listeners. I'm showing my actual printed off. My husband jokes around that I'm old lady because I like paper so much. I said, well, just buy me Buy me a Remarkable, and it will help everybody out. We should just have a thing. Everybody hold up your goals and take a screenshot. So, but yeah, I do. And so, somebody really important, and actually, I mean, we're all from the same ecosystem, and so my mentor in that ecosystem actually took me through goal setting process 2 years ago now. And by nature of going through that process, it really opened my eyes, and he was very generous to share his goals with me. And so I had a role model, and it's like, oh, wow, this is how you organize your goals. And I hadn't looked at my goals that way. I hadn't looked, like you said, I hadn't had family goals before that. So I started looking at my goals in a very, like, really, what is the vision? And what we really have to get to is, what is the purpose? Like, where am I headed? What do I believe my contribution in this world is? And then what do I want to see over this next year? What's going to inch me closer to that? What's going to feed into that? And we have to think about, I think most of us, most people listening would agree, the people that you have the intimate relationships with are really integral in your life, and they should be a priority in your life. And so on my goals, like, that's the number one thing. Family is the first set of goals that I make. Like, wow. And once it's super fun. Once you start looking at that, I didn't realize, wow, there are areas that we like to be in the outdoors. So what areas do we want to explore? What areas? I hadn't done that. I hadn't done this whole, like, let's actually set goals for fun in our life. And so it's just been fun. Or even, what kind of skills do we want to teach? Well, you know what? I mean, my kids are actually pretty good cooks already at 14 and 11. And I can say, hey, can you go grill this? Can you do that? And it's just phenomenal to be able to have a busy day and to know that they can, handle that. And, I mean, they're good at what they do. And they're not doing, like, whatever chef show you might watch. They're not like that, but I mean, they can hold their own. Right. And so, like, hey, you know what? I want to incorporate them more in the kitchen. I want us working more together in the kitchen more, because they're going to have to eat the rest of their lives. Like, why not know how to cook good food? Right. So that's the first step. I do have community goals, because being part of our communities, being active in our communities, and that could be your local community, that could be a virtual community, that could really look a lot of different ways. And then I have, sorry, my earbuds are just driving me crazy. I don't usually use them for this reason. And then I have my business goals, and everything is broken down into the granular, and it always has a how. So every goal that I put down has to have, like, okay, well, how would I actually go about doing that? And for me, that was like a stopping point before with my goals. I'd have the goal, and I'd think, that's a great idea, and I want to accomplish that. And then I wouldn't have the actual tactic as to how I'm going to go about doing that. I like 3 is my favorite number. My company is 3 Keys Investments. Everything. I love 3 because you give yourself a little bit of a runway. And so if you can come up with 3 tactics, 3 different ways that you're going to, you might not use all 3 of those, but you're going to, according to the 80-20 rule, you're absolutely going to use one of those 20%. And so, you're going to find success with that, and that will breed other success. And then I actually have social media goals, which might sound silly, but it falls under, I don't know, it's its own set of goals in and of itself. But that's such a critical part of business and being established in any type of business these days, that not having a social media goal. So how am I going to use my time on social media? Where am I going to be? Because I'm not a scroller. I've broken that habit. My kids, when they were little, I would scroll, because, like when I was nursing babies and things like that. I'm like, okay, we're done with that. I'm done with scrolling. I want to be more present. Why am I here? Why am I on Facebook? What groups do I want to go to? Why am I there? What do I want to contribute into that group? Why am I on LinkedIn? Why am I not over here? Why, like, knowing exactly why, so then you don't have that FOMO, like, oh, I'm supposed to be here and I'm supposed to be everywhere and I got to be present. No, right. I don't. How often do I want to post? What needs to be done for this business? And then looking also, since on the business part, I'm really big into, and what needs to be outsourced. And you will tell yourself, most people
Who,
do,
not how.
oh, I don't have enough money. I can't afford that. And you'll make those excuses. I promise you, you will make far more money the moment you start hiring things out. And even with, I have the most phenomenal virtual assistant. I actually always remind him, you're not just a virtual assistant, you're a partner. You're part of this company. You do integral work to this. Like, I don't view you as just a virtual assistant. You are far more than that. And I rely on you in a powerful way. So you are a partner. Give me the feedback. And looking at people in that way. And we had a conversation this week. Hey, what are you loving? What are you loving about what you're doing? And you need to ask yourself this question. What am I loving about what I'm doing? Because what you do best is like, do more of that. Do more of what makes you happy. I probably have it here. Yeah, I do. I always have books around me because I run a book club and I love reading, but Super Coach by Michael Neal. I always give book recommendations. You absolutely have to read that. That's where I actually latched onto that concept of do more of what you love. And then Peter Drucker talks about this in this little pamphlet. Basically, you can read it in an hour. It's called Managing Oneself. It's absolutely powerful. He echoes that. Do more of what you love. So make sure that you are doing what you love. Make sure that the people you hire are doing what they love. And so I know what my assistant loves in his zone of genius. I'm going to hire somebody else out for like some nitty gritty type work that isn't his love and passion, because they'll be more successful. They'll be more fulfilled, more satisfied. So that's a little tangent-esque on the goals. But if we want to reach our goals, we can't get there on our own. And so looking at our goals as one-dimensional, as this is just about me and me accomplishing these things, is going to leave you feeling dissatisfied and empty and lonely and disconnected, because we're not meant to do this alone. Those goals are the pathway to say, oh, who do I link arms with? And Crystal, you mentioned it, the book Who Not How. I don't know the author. I'm trying to find, it's on the shelf over there. I'm like, can't see the author through that blinding light over there. So, but that is a great book. If you're not familiar with that concept, who is the author again?
I don't
Crystal,
know. I actually think I might have it on my Audible. I don't think I have it physically. So his name's escaping me at the moment. Because if it's not behind
Dan
me,
Sullivan.
it's definitely on...
Right.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure it's Dan Sullivan.
I know
but
that
I'm not...
author, but I don't know if he does one of the other great ones.
We'll put it in our show notes to clarify that.
Yeah,
definitely.
Sure.
But
so Julie, with your
no, go for it.
I was just going to ask you, with all of your different goals that you have, how often do you go back and kind of look at them, revise them, see if you've met them? Because I know, if you're looking at it every week, you might be like, oh, I'm not getting there. But at the same time, you can't just do it once a year. Then you forget your goals. You don't know what they are. Right. So as far as you, how often do you kind of touch back to that list and look and see and measure your metrics of where you are and if you're getting to where you need to be?
I look at them always and often. So they're folded. They're in my granny paper planner, as my husband would say. I use a high performance planner, and they're just tucked in there. And it just makes my life happy. I like having everything all bundled in one spot. But if you're not looking and reviewing your goals at least once a month, you are going to be very dissatisfied at the end of the year. And looking at those goals and making the adjustments. Oh, wow, my business goals need to adjust. The algorithm just changed over on this platform. That's going to shift things. Oh, the interest rates just like skyrocketed. That's going to change things. Oh, a pandemic happened. Oh, this, right. There are going to be some things that we cannot predict. It doesn't mean that we cannot reach our goal, but it just means that we are aware, and maybe we're going to adjust our goal accordingly. Maybe we're going to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to be pressing pause, or I know that it's going to take at least 3 months to close a multifamily deal right now because of how lending is. And so that's going to shift my timeline as to how many properties I'm going to be able to close or something, right? Like, so just being aware so that you can make those adjustments instead of criticizing yourself and saying, oh, you didn't do it. Well, I didn't do it because maybe I didn't reach that because there were outside circumstances that I couldn't predict. And so we can't feel defeated when that was something outside and beyond our control.
That's true.
Absolutely.
Flexibility is very important.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So
Flexibility
great.
is definitely key.
Nice. Oh
There was
man,
something
this
else I
is
was going to add on goals, and I was like, what was it?
Oh, there's so much to add.
I know there is a lot to add. If you're looking at setting realistic goals, I know what I was going to say. I'll say two things because I think we're going to be wrapping up here. Don't worry about living in quote reality. Trust your intuition, which means you need to get to know yourself really, really well, because there are going to be times where maybe you just had a baby, and so maybe your goals aren't going to be as intense. Maybe you're like me and you have a teenager and you're like, maybe my goals won't be maybe my goals will be tenser just to give myself some, like a little release. No, but you like look at what's going on in life and put your goals out there in a way that mirrors what you really want. And if you're honest with yourself, you're going to know how much you have to pour into the goals and how intense you want them. And that could fluctuate. And maybe your goals are going to look different. I do have dates on my goals. And so, hey, I want this by this time. And so you can make your goals quarterly goals as to benchmarks. I want to reach this at this point. I know that I'm going to have the time. The kids are going to be back in school. I'm going to be able to focus in the fall. And so I'm going to really hit super duper hard. So keep that in mind and plan your goals with your energy. And then the last thing I would say on goals is this is a new practice of mine. I literally just did this last week for the first time, which a lot of people listening are going to be like, I cannot believe that. And so I'll feel no shame. I'm glad that I adopted it now. But I actually started doing better project managing. And I mapped out the weeks left in my timeline. For me, that's from now till December 23rd when my kids go on, Christmas break. So, and you're listening to this, whenever you're listening to this, you're going to look, there's always something in the timeline that's going to be like a little hallmark moment. Right. And so I have I don't know, 8 weeks. And I just put those 8 weeks there. I put the different categories where my projects are, because I literally mapped out in a very nuclear way in the back. You guys want to say in the back of the high performance planner, I just sat there and I mapped out the minutia of like, where am I going? What am I doing? Like, what does this look like? What are the categories of that I want to make these steps in and I want to make strides in? And then I created a sheet that has like an Excel sheet, and it has all of those categories on it. It has all of my weeks on it, and it has the actual task that I'm going to do week by week in each category. And when I look at my calendar, now I can say, I'm actually going through this with someone in a couple hours to support them. Like now I can look at my calendar and say, oh my gosh, like I've got a doctor's appointment for my husband that's going to take like 3 hours. I've got, like you look at, I really don't have that much time, but these things are really important. And now it's on my calendar. And because it's on my calendar, it exists, because if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. And because it's on my calendar, people can't schedule time there. So I just scheduled time to pour in and invest into the goals that I find important. And if you're not putting it, this is my new adopted belief. If it's not on your calendar, it's not important to you. So why are you even writing the goal?
Jill, that's so great.
Yeah.
I have one.
It's very profound.
One thing I want to add to that I found for myself is that I also have to add a little chunk of time in each day for things that come up that may throw the day off if I don't allot for that time. That was my problem with time blocking, is that I would have every minute of every day completely scheduled with a specific task. And then something would happen, and then I just feel like I would be overwhelmed and behind because I was so micromanaging in that way. So allowing myself, I think it was on a Tony Robbins course, allowing myself a little bit of time, like an hour, for those things that just happen, to put it in there.
I love that. And keep in mind that as you're setting, like if you choose to do something like that, when I look at my calendar, I also know how much energy I have. And what is that task going to take from me? I have some tasks that I need to do that I cannot hand off to my assistant. I need to do them, but they're tasks that they're not challenging to me. I could turn some music on and it's going to be fine. And then I have some tasks like working on a book that is like my brain is sweating intensely, right? And so looking at what your demands are on yourself, like I can't sprint all day long. I'm in pretty good shape and everything, but I could not go and sprint for 3, 5, 7 hours. And so sometimes our schedules will reflect that. We'll think that we can just sprint all day long. It's like, no, how much? Let's look at this, just like we train for any physical event, and let's make sure that we have that buffer zone. And how much brain sweat am I having this day with my other activities that are already scheduled? Is this going to be conducive? Am I going to be present when I'm showing up at this task, or am I going to be so exhausted mentally that I'm not going to be able to show up? Yeah, Candy, I hear you on that. I
just want to add to that one little thing, and then we're going to come around to a little game that we play. In that process of allotting that time, I also I don't know where I read this. I read a lot, listen to Audible, a lot of self-help books all the time, and on it was determining what part of your day, where do you perform the best, whether you're a morning person, midday, evening person. Those tasks that require more energy, more focus, that's when you put those in on your calendar. So for me, as an example, is that total focus, computer time, being completely 100% able to crunch numbers, boom, 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 mornings. I get up an hour earlier to be able to do a lot quiet time and morning time for those really hard focusing moments. And then the other tasks of any given day can go in other areas where I can be distracted.
I love that. And we have to have some distracted time each day. And we have to have that time where it's like, this is the end. And I have to remind myself of this. I love everything that I do. I love investing in multifamily. I love coaching people. And I love my life. I've built this. It's great. But I also have to go, it's done. The kids get picked up from school, put it away, right? Yep. So giving yourself also that. There's a book, Candy, that kind of goes in line with that. It's called Win, and has a subtitle. It's called Win. It's by Daniel Pink, the scientific timing for success or something along those lines. But I read that the day before the shut down in March during the pandemic. We went to the library. It was sitting there. I just grabbed it, and it turns out to be a fantastic book about knowing yourself, knowing the cadence of, when do I perform optimally? And he goes into it deeper, but it's a very fascinating book. Be very supportive for anybody looking to level up in that regard.
Wow. Thank you so much.
That's not the first time I've heard that recommendation. I heard it recently, a couple of weeks ago, and it's something that I need to get on quickly, because I finally got, I would personally was one that would forget to do my time blocking. I would time block all of the stuff my things I have to do, more so for other people. But being a mom and running your own business from home, you tend to forget to put in these are my hours I am working. I have a goal. I need to dedicate these hours to this part of my business, And it became something where I would have a family member, somebody call me and could you help me with this? And I'd be like, of course I can, because it's I don't know if it's guilt, but I'm home. And then I didn't prioritize the importance of my things that I had to do until I finally just buckle down and be like, no, this is my job. This is my business. I have to time block myself. And I kind of had to realize that wasn't a selfish thing to do. That's important. And I'm not good at associating the energy reserves from that. So that's awesome. I'm definitely going to pick that book up and kind of realize how I can optimally use my energy for it. So it is important. I'd say to anyone that's contemplating the time blocking, do it 100%. It is so huge. And don't forget to time block you time. because you don't want to time block everything. Time block a little bit of time for you. Even maybe your you time is family time, like it is for me. Like my me time to relax is like, okay, this is Talia time, my daughter, and it's just her and I and my husband, and nothing gets in that way. And that recharges me. That's like my time. So I would say that's something I had to, it took me a while to remember that and learn that. But it's important.
Nice.
And Julie, this has been so great. And I'm sure as much as we want to keep talking and chatting with you, I'm sure our listeners would love to learn, if they wanted to learn more about you or to reach out to you, how could they do that?
Well, thank you. I would say if you like this type of information, check out the Conscious Investor podcast. That's my podcast. Monday episodes are always mindset episodes. And so lots of information, very in sync with this conversation right here. And Thursdays are industry, interviews with industry people in investing. But I love people on podcasts to be able to connect with me more personally. If you've heard this, that means you want to connect. That means you probably are like, Julie is nice. I will be your friend. so reach out. You can go to my website, julieholly.com. And that's like the back door. You have to actually type it in. It's not going to auto populate. And it's the more personal side. It will show you the podcast and the investing. I'll have my coaching page up there soon, which is really exciting. But reach out to me in that capacity. Schedule a time on the calendar. If you need support in any way, I love supporting people and helping them, reach the next level of their possibility.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing all of that. And the way we kind of like to wrap up each episode, we have play a fun little quote of the day game. And Tamara, she's going to be holding up 3 cards. And each card has this great thought-provoking quote of the day. And Julie, as our guest, if you could please help us picking a card by selecting a number from 1 through 3. And that's going to show us what quote we have for the day that we can chat on a bit.
I think everybody knows what number I'm going to choose. My favorite number, 3.
Yes, I was going to
Well, yeah, she's going to pick number 3.
I was like,
Her favorite number. Yay. Well, Julie, number 3, I think you're going to actually really like it too.
It works out like that.
If you aim for nothing, you'll hit it every time.
That is very perfect for this episode.
What's that?
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect.
So it's really, that's a wrap then.
So how does that resonate with you, Julie?
If you aim for nothing,
you'll hit it every time.
Well, when we're talking about in relation to goals, particularly, I mean, a lot of us are intimidated and we don't want to aim for anything because we don't want to hit nothing. Or, we'd rather hit nothing, I should say. We'd rather hit nothing than aim and totally miss.
No, I know.
And so I'm taking that as, don't be afraid. Aim for the bullseye. Aim for getting the arrow through the other arrow that's already in the bullseye. Split it in half. There's a name for that or something. Or if you want to go into axe throwing or whatever it is, whatever you're doing, just aim for it and don't be afraid. Be nice to yourself.
It's funny. I like your thoughts on that. And I think this is one of my favorite parts of having this type of environment, this like roundtable discussion, because everyone hears something and thinks something a little bit differently. Because for me, the first thing that it brought home is how important it is to dream big, because you don't get anything out of, I guess you could say, like setting a goal that's so easy to achieve that it takes virtually no effort. There's, in my opinion, I guess the point of setting a goal is kind of like the power of that specific goal, so to speak, I guess you could say, and like the satisfaction you get out of like truly achieving something. So I think the quote is, can never hurt to shoot for the moon, because if you miss, you like land among the stars. And that's just something like, that's what it brings to me. Like, it makes me realize, gosh, if you don't dream really big, you're never going to get anywhere. It is funny. I see it from that side too, though. The fear of missing is essentially.
And not getting anywhere.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gross.
That's my biggest.
Oh, no,
that's
right.
One of my biggest
Exactly.
fears is just being stagnant and never growing as a person. Not even just business, like as a human, as a mom, as a wife, as a business person, everything.
I like the way that you talked about one of the awareness was that you don't do it alone. And that resonates with me on this as well, in thinking that it's either, I used to have black and white thinking, and I still have that in certain areas of my life. But one of the things that I think about with this quote is that I would rather have 20% of something than 0%.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if I have 20%, that's probably doing it all by myself. But I can get even higher in that percentage of achieving a goal is if I involve others in it. And that what really, that resonates for me quite a bit from hearing what you talked about. And it is like a we program. It's not a me program anymore.
Yes. It's so much more fun.
I like everything that's been said so far.
Yeah. Well, I guess we've run out of time for today, but we loved having you on, Julie, and this has been a great conversation about the importance of setting goals and, your mindset, getting it right to be able to accomplish your goals in life. It's really been a great discussion. I think we could go on forever, but we do have to wrap up. So we wanted to say thank you for being here, Julie, and thank you for our listeners for listening as well. If you want to learn more about us, you can check us out on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or visit our website at therealestatewomen.com. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Bye.
listening.
Bye.
Hi, thank you so much.
The information contained in this podcast is for educational purposes only. We are not licensed professionals and do not give investment advice, tax advice, or other professional advice. Please consult a licensed professional before making any financial decisions.